Hey, good morning.
Hey, morning, Stu. How's it going?
Good. How are you? Well,
Good, man.
it's good to see you. Been a
Good to see you
while.
too, man.
So the album is doing really well. I was
I know, right?
like your followers are doubling, your streams are doubling, and it's a
Right.
great album. I'm really enjoying listening to it. How was it making it? Sounded like it was a pretty good process, huh?
Yeah, it was a kind of a wild process. Um, because there's no like uh set producer on it. It was basically like so many people had their hands on it and just sort of morphed and
Like,
became what it is. It was definitely what's it called? Unorthodox, really.
yeah, yeah.
The way it kind of came about. Yeah.
That's well, it's interesting. That's what I thought. Like, I was trying to remember because I know in the first album you had a set producer all the way through, but I thought it was like actually kind of ironic because this album has a lot of different flavors and styles and sounds, but it it works. Like it seems like an album. It doesn't sound disjointed like you thought maybe, like you're saying with having all these different hands in the stew, that it might kind of sound a little bit disjointed, or but it doesn't. It flows really well. But there's a lot more styles, I think, on this album than the first one. Maybe it's just me. I don't know.
Oh no, for sure. Yeah, and I'm glad it sounds cohesive, by the way. Thanks for saying that
Yeah,
because I think that had to do a lot with the players on it. I think they made it, I think they helped really produce it and create the sound of it,
right.
just like great session musicians in Nashville.
Yeah. And I haven't really kind of dug into this, but like similar or same musicians that used on the first album or with your touring band, or has it been all different musicians all along?
Totally different. I didn't even know these guys.
Oh, wow.
Basically, yeah, I know. Uh, so this really amazing woman, her name's Juanita Copeland. She's the CEO of Sound Emporium, which
Okay.
is a famous, amazing studio. It's not in Music Row. It's like on the outskirts of Music Row, which is
Right.
interesting. But Robert Plant and Alison Krauss did their Raising Sand record there, and so many
Okay.
other people like Alabama Shakes and Eric Gales did his record there too. And
Wow. Cool.
so she basically was like, "Hey, I met her at this thing called Rockin' Pod. It was like a podcast like show thing, and I met her on stage actually, and she was like, "I really dig you. You should record your album in my studio." And
Oh,
so I was, and she basically was like, "I know exactly who I want to play on this record." And so
hmm.
she produced it too by having the guys in the back of her head, like her
Sure.
picking and choosing what studio musicians. And along with Joe Trentacosti, he was a engineer producer at Sound Emporium at that time too,
Okay.
and he also helped pick the players on the record, which had a huge part to do with like the sound of the new record and probably why it sounds cohesive. Yeah,
Nice. Well, that's great. I saw
yeah.
that post that you did on Instagram yesterday where you're just sitting in that cavernous, what was
Oh
that?
yeah,
That was beautiful, but again, and then just the natural acoustics, and that was awesome. I enjoyed that. It was,
thanks.
and it was funny too because you kind of kept the blooper in because it was like there's a bit of a pause, and then you're like, oh yeah, this is where I'm supposed to do something. That was like,
That's what it. Yeah, I mean that's what it is. Really, that's the process. Is like sometimes it's like, oh yeah, I was supposed to like just go for it, And I mean, anything creative is like, well, the audacity to create in the first place is like, you know,
yeah, fair enough.
there. Yeah. You know.
That's part of performing, I guess, and part of being an artist. That
Oh yeah.
the actor in us. Um, all right. So the Jax Hollow sound that we're introduced to on High Class Bitch, it's still audible, it's still present to some degree, but this album feels more mature. You're not compromising any of that rawness and that energy. It just seems more articulate, stylistic, in a good way. It's got that rock and roll edge, but it's a little bit more progressive and diverse as well. Tell us a bit about the making of this album and the people involved.
Sure, yeah. Right. So the first album, of course, was with Michael Wagner, and it had, I mean, he's a metal rock, hard rock guy, and so my record definitely fell into that realm and had that twist to it. But with this new record, I really wanted to expand and just like really reach into different creative depths and stylistically too. It varies from very Americana almost to and then ventriloquist is like actually like this New Orleans like jazz kind of progression that I came up with, and then you've got like kind of Zeppelin-y harder rock. We've got Ethereal Emerald, and then uh almost indie to a point. I don't know. No one ever really says that about my music, but kind of, it's just got a lot of my favorite, personal favorite flavors, and then sort of trying to combine that with strong songwriting and strong like uh guitar focused things too. So yeah, it's definitely a huge stretch, and I think the record that I really uh I really wanted to do for some time now, and it took almost well, started recording it last May, so yeah, it's been a year, really.
A slow bake. And
Yeah.
it's interesting. I was gonna, ask some of those typical questions, and I've, it's been always been the comparisons with the sort of Jimi Hendrix sounds or the Zeppelin influence. And I know from talking to you before and hearing other interviews, you're a big Zeppelin person. You can definitely hear some of the other flavors and the roots music and the Americana and things like that. But I'm curious, since you brought it up, what are, maybe three or four of your main musical influences, sort of besides, there's an obvious flavor of Jimi Hendrix and Zeppelin. But what I thought was interesting, I was listening to um, the album this morning, and I'm hearing that kind of what a lot of people might say is almost like a Hendrix kind of intro. Hendrix had that style of playing, sort of on Little Wing and songs like that. But it reminded me of somebody else, and it's escaping me now too. But I think that's the beauty of it, because I mean, you had Keith Richards saying he ripped off every lick that Chuck Berry ever did, but then Keith Richards and the Stones developed a very clean and clear Stone sound, which everybody else ripped off, and so on and so on. So I think that's part of that growth where it's like, yeah, it's, we had the Canadian band up here, Tragically Hip, that became a huge band. And same thing. They started out the first couple albums, a lot of Stonesy riffs and things like that. But by the third album, you can hear those elements sort of in there, but they've now morphed a bit and they've become a Tragically Hip sound. Whereas I think that's what we're seeing on this album is it really is Jax Hollow coming into her own. But tell me some other sort of influences, maybe that we might not know, that maybe be less obvious or more obscure.
Wow, yeah. I mean, thanks for saying that, man. What I've been trying really hard to do is develop, you know, my sound, and it means a lot that you said that because it's hopefully in the right direction. Getting there, I feel like I'm getting there for sure. I've at least got like my teeth sunken in a little bit into
You
it,
do.
and so yeah, so artists that I don't usually talk about, a lot of newer stuff, a couple girls that I think are amazing. We've got Jade Bird, uh, Madison Cunningham. I think she's incredible. And Ashley McBride even,
Yeah.
and for girls, and then, there's Rival Sons and like sort of a lot of the kind of dude blues rock stuff. I mean, you can go down the list for those guys. And there's a cool momentum happening with sort of rock influence, but sort of really focused on singer-songwriter. I like Phoebe Bridgers. I like that kind of indie vibe too. I mean, Jason Isbell is a huge, I was just listening to some of he's got new stuff coming out with a new record, and songwriting wise, I mean, huge fan. And Juanita Copeland introduced me to him in the break room because he was in Studio A and I was like doing stuff in Studio B, and
Kidding.
I almost passed out. It was amazing. But that's he's just a huge influence of mine too. So yeah, there's a lot of things I don't really talk about. I even listen to rap too. There's just a lot of I just take it from any avenue. Anything that I sort of get like that's it's just like that spark, just the tenacity maybe. It's just something in there, but you can really take it from anything, you
Yeah.
know.
Agreed.
Uh yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big Rivals. a Rival Sons fan. And Jason Isbell is a friend at work years ago that turned me on to him, and I've just been obsessed ever since. But he also seems
right?
like he seems like he kind of might be a big goofball to meet too, like in a good way, like a fun
Oh,
kind of. I mean, he's a thinker for sure, and a lot of serious things that he addresses. But he also seems like I see him on Twitter, and he's just wacky with his
yeah,
responses to things,
yeah.
and he doesn't seem like a guy that takes any crap. So, which
No.
is, he's just shooting from the hip. I know most of the people that you mentioned. There's a few I don't, and which is exciting. So I'll have to look them up after the interview. So the audience is growing, and the album is doing well. Seems like you're much more accessible yourself.
Yeah, I feel yeah, I do. Also,
And
I've
sorry,
been
and
doing
maybe
a lot of personal growth. Yeah,
and I was
for
going to
sure.
say
I've been
sorry,
experiencing that.
maybe not to interrupt, but maybe to sort of take that one step farther with a lot of the things that you're posting. Like you're seem a lot more savvy and a lot more comfortable on social media as well, promoting.
Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to step up my game too. I've got a couple sort of people. Sort of, I feel like I can't say there's some things that I can't tell you, but there are some pretty big things that are happening, and I do. I have some people peering in and like watching and just sort of on the sidelines. Not, and some are rooting for me and some are helping me get there. But it's kind of, I'm in a very interesting spot where I'm about to do something pretty crazy and I think career defining and there's, you know what I mean? When you have like I can't say it, but there's the moment before something happens and after, and you try to prepare yourself for when that moment is going to happen and it's going to change a lot of things. And you can't because you don't know.
Wow.
And I am trying to get ducks in a row and work on my social media and, get the numbers up and all that stuff. But in reality, I am totally like beyond the moon excited and feeling crazy because I'm also terrified, but more so it's the terrifying of like I it's happening. It's happening, it is. It's happening and I've worked really hard for it and I I don't know how to I'm just gonna try to man, I can't tell you.
you
Something. I know
you've
I'm
got
being
me
very ambiguous.
you've got me so intrigued. This is wild. Well, I mean, I guess I'll know when it happens, and I can say that I had a whiff of it coming. So, um, I mean, I always felt my instincts, and you know, my hope was that there were huge things on the horizon for you. And the more I've kind of followed you and got to know you, I see how hardworking you are and how much effort goes into not just. I mean, like there was, probably leads me to the next question. You've done a lot of traveling, both as a working musician and as a human being. How have these journeys and travels impacted you and your sound and I guess your work ethic and what you're doing? I mean, it seemed like you kind of took a step back and paused for a second and kind of went on this. I mean, you were posting, I'm here, and I'm doing this. And it was like, seemed like a huge reflective period, or maybe it was a recharging or recalibrating. I'm not sure. Or
Yeah,
maybe I,
huge. Yeah, reflection's a great word. I've been taking a magnifying glass to my whole entire being, my like even the way that I approach things. It's a huge self-reflection, growing more as a person, as an artist. I'm just really, really trying and always like shooting up and trying to see if I can scratch the surface of a little bit beyond my comfort zone and just keep expanding, to see, what's in store. I've been away from the US for almost half a year now, and I can't wait to go back home. I can't wait to go to Nashville. I don't really have a home. You know what I mean? I have been all my stuff's in a storage locker in Nashville. Like it's wild and it's crazy and it's unpredictable and it's amazing. But like uh there's been a lot of I have to find that groundness in myself in order to be living kind of this very unorthodox life. And I didn't realize that until, having a couple mental breakdowns, having a couple breakups, having a couple, just life thrown at you moments. And yeah, reflection is a great thing, but I'm ready to go back to the US. I've got one more week, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Wow. There's probably a lot to unpack there. I noticed the tattoo, and I don't think I noticed those before. Is that new?
Oh yeah, that's this for the underdog anthems, the tattoo,
Yeah. Yeah.
the Greyhound. Yeah, I think I was gonna get a tattoo every time I release a record, so I'm due for another one. That's my first one.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Nice. I thought it was. My wife and I have been talking about getting our first tattoos finally. So, I mean,
Oh,
I don't,
first tattoos.
yeah, I mean,
Oh,
we're both in our 50s, and I don't know if it's a midlife crisis. It's funny because when I was younger, I mean, in my teens, friends of mine were starting to get tattoos. Tattoos were not the thing back then that they are now. It would be more singular. So as we're kind of wrapping things up, and I probably should. So what's next, both immediately as the album has officially been released and in the near and maybe not so near future? You've alluded to a few things, so I guess you can't really talk about those, but are there some things that you can talk about, or is it all kind of tied into one big package?
uh, a lot of things I can't talk about right now, but I probably can talk about in like 3 weeks.
Okay.
It's just right on the cusp of not being able to talk about it. Uh,
Well, maybe we can shift gears. You've got the CD release party coming up in
right,
Nashville
yeah,
in a couple of weeks, which I have tickets for. My wife and I are hoping to get down. My niece might come as well. Uh,
that would
she's
be amazing.
she's a big country music fan, and she's never been to Nashville. We've been to Nashville a couple of times, but not in many many years. So hopefully we'll be able to sneak down for a couple of days.
I'll
Um,
actually be announcing this thing at the show.
okay,
So,
all the
yeah,
more reason to be there then.
it would be
Uh,
cool. Man, it'd be so cool to see you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, tell us a bit about the show. Tell us about the venue and who else is going to be on the bill. And
Yeah, so Basement East, May 28th, it's right around the corner, and we've got the Naked Gypsy Queens, Moon City Masters, and then a special guest appearance by Grace Bowers. She's amazing. You probably know her. Uh, she's got like amazing hair, and she's like a Gibson sign artist, and she just shreds on guitar. And yeah, it's the album release show at the Basement East. It's gonna be awesome. We've already sold quite a few tickets, and we really want to just like pack the place and have an amazing show and sort of send off into the summer into a great tour season.
right
So
on. I'm
yeah.
looking forward to it. You mentioned her shredding on guitar, and it seems to me, and I don't know, some people like to make a big point about this, and some people are kind of, let's not make too much a point, but it seems to be a moment in time for female guitarists. And it started, a few more than a few years back. Back in my day, there wasn't a whole lot of it, but every once in a while there'd be this great blues person, Sue Foley, and different people up in our area who would get this recognition and take off. And if you go way back, Sister Rosetta Thorpe playing her Gibson SG back in the 60s.
Yeah, she's a
Um,
baddie.
yeah, I mean, so you kind of nodded when I was saying that. You're feeling that too. I mean, it really does seem like the time is now for, and maybe just young people in general seem to be getting back to these stringed instruments. But it really seems that we're seeing a lot of amazing female guitar players.
Yeah, I mean, keep it coming, you know. Luckily, people like Sister Rosetta Tharpe and stuff, and Melissa Etheridge and Bonnie Raitt and all these people make it possible for me and for Grace Bowers to do what we're doing. Like they've already had to deal with their amount of bullshit they have to deal with is up here. My amount of bullshit I have to do is right here. Grace Bowers' amount of bullshit is right here. So it's like
Right,
slowly a little bit every single like I don't know 5 years. I feel like it's less bullshit to have to deal with, and then all of a sudden you've got great female guitarists because they're not you know shunned for trying to do something that's
right.
like male dominated.
Yeah.
So people paving the way certainly
Well,
couldn't be here without it.
yeah. Well, I know it's gained a lot of light lately. Ann Wilson talking about the origins of the song Barracuda. Speaking of the male dominated world and the unbelievable things that record executives, basically people are saying to their artists, to their employees, which, he'd go to jail for these days pretty much. And her sister, certainly is no slouch as a guitar player, Nancy. So yeah, I mean, I think every decade's had a handful of probably great people that did manage to get into the limelight, and probably a whole bunch more who, because of the negative stereotypes and attitudes and things like that, weren't able to kind of cross over or were beaten back down. But so yeah, it's great that there is this movement going on, if we want to call it that. So last question: do you have a favorite song on this record?
Yeah, it changes. I have I love Wolf in Sheepskin and Wallflower Girl, and Renegade Season is my favorite now though, because it's the one that's actually making a lot of moves on Spotify, because it got picked up by a playlist, like an actual legit Spotify playlist. I was like, what? How's this happening? I'm an independent artist.
Yeah,
I don't have any, I'm not throwing money at this. And that got picked up by Modern Blues Rock, and it's been actually gaining me a ton of streams, which is like, okay, that's cool. That's never happened before. So,
yeah, yeah. I noticed that as well. I saw your post about that. It's exciting times, and it's funny because I think that's the exact same trajectory of my favorite songs, and in that particular order, and for that exact reason. But yeah, well, that's great. I'm happy that things are going this way. I can't wait to see what happens on the 28th with the show and the announcements and all that other
yeah.
stuff. So, as I said, hopefully we'll make it down. I appreciate your time this morning. It's so good to see you again, and I'm so happy that things are going so well for you. And
All right. Thanks, too.
you
Yeah,
got it.
likewise.
All right, Jax, it's so good to see you. Take care.
See ya.
All the best.
You
See you
too,
soon.
man.
Bye bye.
Yeah.